Okay, so this video is going to go over distributing a negative sign. The directions will say that we want an equivalent expression. And what that means is that we'll want basically to rewrite the expression that we're given so that it still means the same thing, but in a simpler form. Our first example is distributing a negative when it's outside of the parentheses. So this negative sign is actually having a -1, and when we distribute, what we're doing is saying, I have a -1 here, and I want to multiply it to each term in my parentheses. So I'm going to get -1 times 6x, so I'm going to get -6x, and then -1 times a positive 10y, so negative and a positive, so -10y. Then I look to see, do I have any like terms? Anything I can combine? No, I do not. So that is it. So our first one is just looking at what it means to distribute that. It just means that that negative will be multiplied to each term in the parentheses. Our second example is if we have a negative outside of the parentheses, but also having a term outside as well. So we're going to write in that -1 always. It helps us. Now, this c that's on the outside, we do not touch until we've actually distributed our -1 inside of the parentheses. So this is our first step. And then we'll deal with c. Since we're not touching c, we'll just bring it down and then figure out what -1 times 1.2d is. That just makes it a -1.2d. And then -1 times -6.7. Negative times a negative is a positive 6.7. And then again, I look to see if I have any like terms, anything I can combine. It looks like no. So we're done with that example. The third and last example is if we have a negative term here, -2a, minus a -7.3b minus 7. So now we're looking at this. It might look a little more daunting than the other ones, but it's actually not. This -1 is still here. We're distributing that -1 to the terms in the parentheses. And again, we're going to leave that -2a alone because it's our order of operations tell us to deal with the parentheses first and then add or subtract whenever we have to. So that -2a stays the same. And I'm multiplying -1 times a -7.3b, so negative times a negative is positive 7.3b. -1 times a -7, negative times a negative is positive 7. And then I look, do I have any like terms? I've got an a, a b, and then no variable. So they're all staying separate. And that is my equivalent expression. So like we've kept value the same, but now we've kind of simplified what it looks like. And that's it for distributing a negative sign.